I think if you wait until Election Day to send it in, even with 3 days, it's probably not a good idea. We're actually suggesting, encouraging people to walk their ballots in right now.
That was Pennsylvania's Governor Tom Wolf, and Election Day is 6 days away, and leaders in several states, not just Pennsylvania, including other key battlegrounds, are urging voters who have not returned their mail-in ballots yet to do so now, to avoid mailing them because of delays at the post office. The Washington Post reports that Wisconsin elections officials are redoubling their efforts to get voters to return their ballots as soon as possible. That's after the Supreme Court ruled that ballots received after November 3rd, that's Election Day, cannot be counted no matter when they're postmarked. Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson made that point clear. She said this, quote, "We are too close to Election Day and the right to vote is too important to rely on the Postal Service to deliver absentee ballots on time." Case in point, NBC-owned television stations and NBC-LX conducted an experiment just to see how long it would take letters to get to destinations across the country. Of the 809 letters sent in October, only 79% of them arrived in the 1 to 3 day window that was promised by the Postal Service. That's well below the goal of delivering 95% of mail during that time frame. Now, all this means that a significant number of ballots mailed right at the last minute could arrive too late to be counted, especially in states that aren't going to count ballots received after Election Day, regardless of when they're postmarked. And even if your ballot arrives on time, there could be another issue. Experts say 1 to 2% of the nearly 70 million mail-in ballots cast this year, potentially more than 1 million ballots at those numbers, could be rejected because of mistakes in filling out the ballot or missing or invalid signatures. Joining our conversation, Jason Johnson, politics and journalism professor at Morgan State University and contributor to the GRIO, and Aaron Hayes, editor-at-large for the 19th. Lucky for us, Jason and Aaron, MSNBC contributors. A.B. Stoddard is also still here. And we have NBC News Justice correspondent, our friend Pete Williams, has popped in with some breaking news on all these topics from the United States Supreme Court. Pete, what have you got?
Right. This is specifically on the Pennsylvania case. Where it stood is that the Republicans who lost the first round last week, asking the Supreme Court to put an emergency hold on the state Supreme Court's ruling that extended the ballot deadline, the Republicans went back to the Supreme Court and said, okay, take this case full up on a fast-track appeal. And today, the Supreme Court just a few seconds ago said, no, we're not going to do that. And very significantly, what was the vote of Justice Amy Coney Barrett? Quote, she took no part in the consideration or decision of this motion. So on the first big election case to come before the Supreme Court, since she became a justice, she took no part. She sat this one out. Now, of course, this doesn't say why she did that. It may be because this was well along in the decision process before she got there, and she did not want to come in and sit in and make everybody start over again. But this is a 6-3 or a 5-3 decision, I should say. She took no part. Justices Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, and Neil Gorsuch said the court should hear this case. It should take it on a fast track. They believe that the state Supreme Court did the wrong thing in Pennsylvania, that only the legislature can set the rules for an election, not the state Supreme Court. And they say they hope, they say what has happened here has, quote, needlessly created conditions that could lead to serious post-election problems. But in any event, this is a setback for Republicans. They were hoping the U.S. Supreme Court would take this on a fast track and get it decided before the election. It doesn't appear that that's going to happen, and Amy Coney Barrett sat this one out. Nicole?
And Pete, just to make clear, what did they want the court to do? What did they want from this decision for them?
Well, they wanted to win full up on the merits. They wanted the Supreme Court to rule that the state Supreme Court violated the Constitution by extending the deadline. The Republicans' view, and it's the view of these three justices I was just talking about, is that because the Constitution says that states choose their presidential electors that vote in the Electoral College in the manner as the legislatures direct, that only the legislature can change the rules. Now, the other side has said, well, that's true unless the rules would violate the Constitution, in which case the courts have a role. So the state Supreme Court said, extend the deadline by 3 days. Last week, the Republicans said, put an immediate hold on that for now while we appeal it. Then this week, they said, OK, now we're appealing it. Hear our appeal. rule that the state Supreme Court got it wrong, and the U.S. Supreme Court, at least in the short term, is not going to do that.
Pete Williams, thank you so much for bringing that to us and for helping us make sense of it. It's great to see you, my friend. Jason, let me come over to you. I mean, I guess, though, what did they want them to do? They wanted them to suppress the vote for them. Is that where we are?
Yeah. That's at this point, we can say, I have thought this for a long time. There is absolutely no way that Donald Trump can declare himself the winner and it's a legitimate election. That's it. This is a nationally coordinated plan by Republicans to suppress the vote. They don't want people to count votes for 3 days, depending on its mail. You also just had a ruling coming down in Pennsylvania today that, ballots that come in past 8 o'clock have to be set to the side in case they're going to be reviewed by the Supreme Court, which is insane because if I'm in line at 8 o'clock to still vote, my ballot would still count. But if my ballot arrives by the mail past 8 o'clock at 8:01, for some reason, it doesn't count. This is all a coordinated attempt to destroy people's right to vote. There is no credibility to the Republican Party at all when it comes to elections. And any Democrat at this point who is pretending that civility or comedy or anything else can be achieved with these Republicans is an idiot. And I hope they take this into consideration and fight like heck after Tuesday, because that's what's going to be required to save this country.
And Aaron, it all really clicks for me. I mean, all of my Democratic sources and friends and people that I know, and frankly, Joe Biden's coalition includes a whole hell of a lot of the former Republicans that I used to work with and know, and I'm sure AB feels the same way. The anxiety is not just around, 4 years ago, it was around a hidden Trump vote. Sort of a hidden, embarrassed to admit they like Trump. Now it is around these kinds of issues, not hidden, an overt effort to not just suppress a vote, not just subject people to 12-hour lines to wait to vote, not just stick one ballot box in a huge Texas county, but to take the people that have voted legally and authentically and in time to go in the mail and throw them away, because Donald Trump also screwed with the Postal Service. I mean, this is just doesn't pass the laugh test on any level. And I know I have to stop wondering, but I do wonder where the rational and reasonable Republicans are that can say, enough, we created this mess. We should let all the votes that have been cast, that have come in, that have the right signatures be counted.
Well, there is a concern, Nicole. In this climate, the political climate and the pandemic, two things are present. Tremendous voter excitement, but also the threat of voter suppression that is looming over this election and that, frankly, I experienced firsthand right here in Pennsylvania. I'm based in Philadelphia. It's the most populous county in the state. And, the mantra was make a plan, right? I made a plan. I had requested a mail-in ballot. That ballot did not make it to me, and so I was one of the thousands of people in Philadelphia County that went to cast their vote early before the deadline, which was Tuesday. I normally vote, in every election, stood in line, and 4 hours later, I emerged. And so directly experiencing the voter suppression that an untold number of Philadelphians and an untold number of Americans are going to experience this cycle. And I say that, not to portray myself as a victim. I mean, I'm a journalist. I'm somebody who has 4 hours, frankly, to stand in line. But there are too many people in this country who do not. And so, it is for them that I had to write this column so that people know. I mean, frankly, I think, more political journalists, if people are going to experience this, more journalists should experience it, because they, having a direct experience with this really just puts a totally additional lens on this. And I think the uncertainty created, at the federal level with the Supreme Court and at the post office just underscores the need for folks to turn their ballots in. Yes, the post office is really not an option 6 days out. Turn your ballot in if you have it. And, but the threat of voter suppression is very real. It's very present. And this is what it looks like in the 21st century.
And, AB, how we know this is part of the vast right-wing conspiracy? Because lifelong Republican election lawyer Ben Ginsburg told us so. Ben Ginsburg has worked on Republican presidential level campaigns for decades, and he came out in Miles Taylor fashion months ago and said that Republicans have searched for voter fraud for decades. They never found any until Donald Trump came along and called on his supporters in North Carolina to vote twice, which is felony voter fraud. You now take that act that brought Ben Ginsburg out to sound the alarms that it is Republicans committing voter fraud, not any of the kinds of people that would wait 8 hours to vote. Where is the bipartisan outcry for election reform in this country?
Oh, I've been waiting to hear some Republicans before election night say something about this beyond Ben Ginsburg. And you're right, he had a piece in the Washington Post a few weeks ago after he initially came out, underscoring the fact that he believes that these bogus claims by the president, these lies, are terrible for the Republican Party, not just for the president's chances of having enough people in his party vote for him by mail, which, you know, most seniors have and certainly have in Florida all these years. He was talking about Republicans down ballot clinging to possible leads on election night where the president might say, oh, no, all of these are fraudulent. And the Republicans, perhaps even in races that could decide the Senate majority, would have to either defy the president or say it's true, the votes I got are no good. One of the problems for Republicans who have not said really anything. I mean, we've heard a few. Congressman Tom Cole and Mitch McConnell have been a few comments in public saying, I think it's all going to work out fine. I think the mail service is up to this. They deliver a lot of packages at Christmas. It'll be nothing like that. Everything's going to go fine. We trust that, that the local election officials can count these ballots. It has largely been silent. And we are literally counting on them next week, should he make these claims, to say that they trust the system and to say that these counts are legitimate. And it really is, it's very telling that the Republican efforts to stop the counts on Election Day or within a certain time frame were not coupled with efforts on the front end to count ballots more quickly. We have not seen any efforts in a pandemic by Republicans to say, let's help the local election officials with additional resources, et cetera, so that we can actually just start counting them more early and count them faster. It's actually just been to close the window of counting, and that really is obvious, in its goal.
Aaron, Bob Bauer, who has the probably unenviable task of marshaling a countrywide legal effort to deal with these challenges, sounded very confident in an interview I heard him give to my friend John Heilman on Showtime's The Circus. But what is the feeling around the grassroots? Because this just is a Herculean effort. I worked on 3 presidential campaigns. We didn't, and again, this may be more of sort of the blissful ignorance of what I was a part of. But you didn't just have to get over Biden doesn't just have to get over the line. He has to win by a landslide that would make all of Donald Trump's planned and expected efforts to delegitimize his victory seem ludicrous. Joe Biden doesn't just have to win the legal lawful votes. He has to defeat all these state Supreme Courts and then contend with a stacked U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, it is a Herculean task ahead of Joe Biden. Do you think he's up for it?
Well, I think he certainly is standing up that army of legal folks to push back against the voter suppression that we are also seeing being fought at a legal level from the Trump campaign. Having a counterweight to that is important, but also, yes, that is why they are urging people to vote early and to vote in record numbers, because having an outcome that is a mandate and not one on the margins is an outcome that is more difficult to challenge. The possibility of knowing who the winner is going to be on election night, I certainly am not in the prediction business, so don't know that is going to be probable, but you know, if it is going to be possible, it is going to be because of record turnout. But you know, I just want to piggyback on something that you were referencing before, and that is, you know, more the idea of bipartisan support for voter access and expanding access to the ballot for Americans. This is something that not only Republican elected officials should be embracing, but Republican voters have to reject the politics of voter suppression for, you know, the people that represent them to get on board with this. I think, you know, it could be a bipartisan effort among voters to say that this is not something that we want as a democracy, that we want, you know, a fair fight in deciding who it is that gets to represent us. That Republican voters should also say that just as loudly as you have Democrats who are saying that voter suppression is wrong.
I agree with you. A.B. and Aaron, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Jason is sticking with us. When we come back, the real